You can. Okay. Hello and continued good morning, Ways and Means. Thank you for coming back to committee so promptly. We are going to work on 588 so we don't, so we can be with Tim while we have him. And then 915 and then 775. And then if we still have time, we're going to get back to a committee discussion on the yield bill. Tim, hello. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
I am very grateful to the Office of Professional Regulation and to Tim for doing some fast work on an amendment that Tim is going to share with us.
Here we are. Okay. For the record, my name is Tim Devlin, Legislative Counsel, and let me just adjust everything so we can see everything as much as possible. There we go. So we have three instances of amendment to the Professional Regulation Bill 588 being offered the committee amendment by this committee. The first two are more substantive, and the last one really just gets to effective dates. These amendments all occur in the realm of massage therapy. And the first one we have is, let's see, adding a new amendment to a section not yet amended, but it's on the books, and this is 26 VSA 5425, and this has to do with fees in particular for massage therapists, body workers, and touch professionals, et cetera, et cetera. So we currently, it states applicants and persons regulated under this chapter shall pay those fees set forth in 3 VSA 125B. And the committee may recall that's where we have the initial application fee for $90, and then there's renewal fees as well. And we'll get to that statute's actually amended here as well. We'll get to that in a bit. We add, sorry, no, we, the committee is proposing to add to this amendment a new subdivision B, which will read, an establishment where the practice of massage or the practice of body work is provided by only 2 massage therapists, body work, or touch professionals shall pay reduced fees set forth in 3 VSA 125B. Again, we'll get that to that in the second instance of amendment right here. So we'll add, committee will add a new section 18A to the bill, which will propose amendment to 3 VSA 125 titled fees. And this is where we have the litany of fees for all, or for many professions. So B will now read, shrink this, there we go. Unless otherwise provided by law, the following fees shall apply to all professions regulated by the director in consultation with the advisor appointees under Title 26. Application for registration, $100 except for, and we accept that. D, massage therapists, body work, or touch professionals, $90. And then E, massage establishment qualifying for reduced fee under 26 VSA, section 5425B, $50. One quick kind of more or less drafting note. The $90 fee is just being moved. On statute, for whatever reason in the past, it was under application for licensure and certification. However, massage therapists are registered, not licensed or certified. So this provides some good housekeeping cleanup to hopefully reduce some confusion by practitioners going forward. And so the $90 is the same. What is new here is that massage establishments, which again are more than 2 people, will now have to pay the $50, I believe, right? Yeah, that's right. Okay. So just language is new to me as well. Okay.
Is it, sorry, it's 2.
Yes, I misspoke.
Okay.
Yeah. So an establishment with practice of massage or practice of body work is provided by only 2 therapists shall pay the reduced fee.
Can I try to summarize and you tell me if that's what it actually says? Is that okay?
Sorry, yeah, go ahead, yeah.
Okay, so if there's one therapist that runs a
So person.
nope, that's not the word I'm looking for, establishment on their own, they pay no fee. They're just registering as a massage therapist. If two massage therapists run a establishment together, they both pay a fee to register as massage therapists. And then their establishment has a reduced fee of $50. And then if an establishment has 3 or more massage therapists, that establishment pays the regular new fee that was created.
Yes,
Great, thank you.
thank you.
Is that what that says?
Yes.
Great.
So, let's see, so freezing up the way. Okay, and then.
And then you move something from to a better place, a better little home for it.
Exactly.
Great, but didn't change anything.
And then we have, let's see, biennial renewal, 275, except for massage establishment for reduced fee under 2, which again is establishment with 2 people in it, $75. So similar parallel reduction for renewal as we see in application. And then third has to do with the effective dates, and basically this will just modify the underlying strike all amendments section where it has sections that will shall take effect on passage to include this language as well.
Thank you.
That's it.
Any questions
So
for?
just to make sure. So the first time the establishment registers, if it's 2 or fewer, it's $50, and every 2 years is then $70 to renew the registration for that establishment.
75, yes.
75, thank you, off by $5.
And that's something that we started about 4 years ago, calling it the early bird special or something.
Yes, bring people into compliance.
Indeed. Representative Brannigan.
Are we trying to discourage the larger massage?
No, I think that we're trying to address the concerns that the Massage Therapist Association brought to us yesterday. That a very small practice is essentially, already paying individual fees and doesn't make sense for them to pay an establishment fee, since mostly the goal of the overarching work was to have sort of larger establishments that aren't necessarily owned by massage therapists to be paying the fee. We can hear from OPR who helped draft this, if that is helpful. They're right behind us. I'm going to ask them anyway, so.
Yes.
Do we have any other questions for Jim? Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Will you hang out for 5 more minutes?
Yes.
Cool, thank you. Will you just join us for 1 second? Thank you. Since you're here.
Hello again, since I came today. Jennifer Colin, Director of the Office of Professional Regulation. Thanks for having us back. So yes, we did kind of work on some draft bill language to address the concerns we heard yesterday. The massage therapy, body worker, touch professional profession is a very expensive profession for the Office of Professional Regulation to regulate. It's very expensive because of the enforcement costs. So we have kind of a disproportionate enforcement cost in this profession because we get a lot of complaints. And so one of the things that we were grappling with yesterday in trying to come up with, an alternative or variance from the standard fee was essentially we're kind of this program is likely already running at a deficit, and we didn't want to, kind of bet against ourselves with establishments of 3 or more, because those are going to be the bigger, those are going to be potentially resorts or, establishments that aren't owned by a massage therapist. So we were trying to address the very specific concern of very small establishments of 2 people. Because like the chair said, if it's 1 person, they do not have to register the establishment. They are exempt.
And so this language that we're looking at matches what you offered and your office is.
Absolutely, we support this. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Any questions? No.
Anyone else have anything they need?
Madam Speaker, Madam Chair.
That's
What do you call
That's a motion we do not need today.
So I would move that we amend H 588 according to draft 1.2 as presented.
Thank you. Does anyone want to second that? Thank you so much, Representative Maslin. Representative Kimball moves that we amend H 588. Representative Maslin seconded. Any discussion of the amendment? Representative Maslin.
Just, I appreciate Ledge Council's explanation for why we're doing what we're doing.
Great.
It all makes good sense.
Thank you.
It's a nice catch to catch it in registration versus licensure.
Mhm.
So that was really a great catch.
Mhm. I love when there's a little bit of housekeeping mixed into an amendment. Always feels like I don't know, we're doing a public service. Okay, seeing no other discussion, the clerk, please call the roll.
Representative Brannigan.
Yes.
Vote yes as Representative Burkhart. Representative Quigley is absent. Representative Holcomb.
Yes.
Representative Kimball.
Yes.
Representative Maslin.
Yep.
Representative Odie is absent. Representative Page.
Yes.
Representative Wazazak.
Yes.
Representative Canfield.
Yes.
And Representative Kornheiser.
Yes, thank you.
We have voted the amendment favorable 9-0-2.
Madam Chair, I would move that we find 588 as amended favorable.
Thank you.
Second.
Representative Kimball finds that we find 588 favorable as amended. Representative Wozniak seconded, though I think Representative Brannigan wanted to. Any discussion?
10 more seconds.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, if the clerk could please call the roll.
Representative Brannigan.
Yes.
I'll vote yes as Representative Burkhart. Representative Higley is absent. Representative Holcomb. Yes. Representative Kimball.
Yes.
Representative Maslin. Representative Odie is absent. Representative Page.
Yes.
Representative Wazazak.
Yes.
Representative Canfield.
Yes.
Representative Kornheiser.
Yes.
And we have voted the bill favorable as amended 9-0-2.
Thank you, everyone. Representative Brannigan, do you want to report? Okay. Thanks.
Do we know where this is going now?
I believe it's going to appropriation.
So it won't be on the floor very next.
That sound right to you? Oh, appropriations next? Yes. There must be an appropriation in there somewhere, right?
I think it was more.
We'll figure it out in a minute, Representative Brannigan. Sorry about that.
I just want to know if I have to.
Of
work on
course.
Vacation.
Yes.
Will be hard work anyway.
I thank you, everyone. You're the Senate. Given that Cam is,
Up to the dorm.
hi, so we're still going. Now that, yep, we have 2 more bills.
Question.
Now that, since Cam is here, I wonder if we could jump to 775 and then do 950, H 915 at like 1150. Does that sound okay to the committee?
Does.
Great. He doesn't,
He has a section.
oh, great, thanks. Can you tell Mark 1150?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Good morning. For the record, Cameron Wood.
So sorry, Cameron. Was the reporter from the committee expecting to introduce the bill?
Necessarily, this section
Okay.
is Mark Holly's section and.
Okay.
Answer your question.
Okay, great. So we're just, we might not need you, and I'm so glad you're here in case we do. Thank you. Okay.
All right, good morning. Cameron Wood, Office of Legislative Counsel. That piece of technology doesn't want to work right now, so I apologize. I'm going to walk through this bill with you.
Would you like Sorsha to share her screen?
If you can and would like to. Not sure, this committee, this is twice in a row where, I sit down in the chair and I have issues. Yeah, sure. If you have it, I want to share your screen. I need to hop into Zoom.
You have 20 minutes if you want them.
Sorry.
Yeah.
1:15.
Yeah, let me. I'll ready to go.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, this is essentially coming up. Okay, so we're looking at 775, an act related to creating tools for housing production. This is the recommended amendment coming out of the House General and Housing Committee, which was a strike-all amendment. The first section is related to special assessment bonds, and I'm not going to walk through that because that would be the section that should be covered by my colleague, John Gray. So I'll leave him the pleasure of walking through that. I'm going to start with section 2, which is the reader assistance heading is listing this as the Vermont Housing Special Fund. Because what this is doing is it's amending the statutory section related to giving the treasurer the statutory authority to create a credit facility of up to 10% of the state's average cash on hand. That's current statute. So the state has average cash on hand. The state treasurer's office can take up to 10% of that amount and then invest it in things that the state treasurer deems prudent to invest those monies in, subject to the statutory Uniform Prudent Investor Act. Other than that, there's no limitation really on what the treasurer's office can invest it in. So it doesn't, that those monies do not solely have to be invested in housing, for example. Can be invested in other economic development investments. In statute, the only thing it does say is that the treasurer may invest those monies in infrastructure projects for mobile home parks. Actually, it's the only thing called out in statute specifically. Thank you, sir. Okay, laptops, here we go. Okay, so this is the section I was just referring to. So notwithstanding the 32 VSA 433A, which has a few limitations on what the state treasurer can invest the state monies in, and consistent with the Uniform Prudent Investor Act, like I mentioned, the state treasurer has the authority. That first piece is just cleanup. You can see I'm striking some language here on line 4 through 6, and we're just moving it up into the top of this. So it applies to all of these subdivisions. So that's more of just statutory construction change. What's the substance here? This credit facility currently exists. As I said, treasurer can use up to 10% of the state's average cash balance. The proposal here is to increase that amount to 12.5%. So going from 10 to 12. And from there, in the sub B, it also authorizes the state treasurer to create a separate credit facility of up to 1% of the state's average cash balance. And then in the sub 2, it states that those funds may only, starting on lines 12 here, only used to facilitate housing development through the bulk purchasing of offsite constructed housing or to aid in the purchase of offsite constructed housing units. So the 12.5% isn't limited. It's not even limited to just housing. This new 1% that is going to be here in the sub B is limited solely to bulk purchasing of offsite construction or aid in the purchase of offsite constructed housing units. And if the treasurer creates this 1% credit facility or up to 1% credit facility, they have to equally deduct the same amount from the 12%.
So it's not 13%.
Yes, ma'am. The goal was not to go to 13.5%. It was to remain at 12.5%. Anything that's created in the 1 equally deducted from the 12.5.
But it's just a may and not a shall.
It
Create the second one.
is the,
It's giving them the authority, but not them.
it's the state treasurer shall have the authority. The authority, they're not
Just the
required to,
authority.
they're not required to use the authority if they choose not to. They, the individual. And then, as I said, the credit facility is created here in the B, but then you see the reduction here on line in 10 and 12, 9 and 10, excuse me. The shall be reduced by an equal amount to any amount established there. Okay. Then in sub 3, financial losses of the credit facilities established in that subdivision. Yes, sir.
2 is,
So the 2 is saying that
yeah, it's with, it's a lot, right?
So the 12.5 is not limited on what the treasurer can use, and what the 2 is intended to be there is to say, for that 1%, you can only use it for this purpose. And so then the 3 is financial losses of that 1% credit facility shall be repaid from the Vermont Housing Special Fund, which is established in a new section 12. You may be saying, what is the Vermont Housing Special Fund?
We're gonna have to wait until section 12 to find out.
You're gonna have to wait until a few pages down to find out.
Okay.
Okay, so the rest of this is somewhat cleanup, the sub B, the sub C. I will just pause on subsection C for your awareness. Separate and apart from what we were just talking about, the treasurer already has a statutory authority to create, this is on lines 5 here, moving from 5 to 6, create a credit facility of 2.5% of the state's average cash, or go to lines 10 and 11, financing for climate infrastructure and resilience projects. You have the 10% and you have a 2.5%. Those are the things that currently exist.
And the 2.5% is part of the 10%?
No, ma'am, separate.
12.5%.
Currently, the total amount is 12.5. They're adding another 2.5. So if this were to pass as it's drafted, the total amount would go to 15.
Thank you.
But this in sub C is limited to these climate resilient projects.
Thanks.
Excuse me, climate infrastructure and resilience projects. That's important because we get to page 5, this new subsection E.
We didn't have to wait that long after all.
Subsection E, which says that the loans that the state treasurer receives, excuse me, the interest on the loans that the state treasurer receives from these credit facilities, all of them. So including the 10%, including the proposed new 1% for offsite housing, and including interest for those climate projects. All of the interest on the loans goes into this Vermont Housing Special Fund.
That currently goes to the general fund?
And it currently goes to the general fund, yes, ma'am.
I can't find it now. The part about the climate resilience,
Yes, sir.
that already exists, right? That's
Yes, sir.
existing law.
Yes, sir. And so what this E is doing is exactly, Madam Chair, what you said. Interest on all of these loans currently goes to the general fund. Sub E is saying we're going to capture that and put it in this new Vermont Housing Special Fund. Most of the language in this new section 12 for this special fund is boilerplate. The fund consists of monies appropriated, monies transferred, interest paid, etc. The key provision to hone in on starts with this C1 on line 15, which says that the treasurer shall use funds under this section, so the interest, to provide capital for housing projects in Vermont that, in the treasurer's discretion, are necessary to promote the increased availability of housing, including the bulk purchasing of offsite constructed housing. So the interest is only available for provide capital for housing projects. It doesn't have to be offsite constructed housing projects, but it can include that.
And this is not that the fund would be used to purchase the houses, the offsite constructed houses, but that the fund would be used to lend to a private something who would buy the offsite houses, or is the treasurer buying the offsite houses?
Says that the treasurer could be the one doing the bulk purchasing.
Okay.
And in that last sentence, including the form of grants, interest-free loans, or investment of equity stakes in housing projects.
Yes, sir.
So the state would be owning an interest in those housing projects.
Good. Yes, sir. One,
Representative Welcome?
And this is done refigured on an annual basis based on current year's cash balance.
I believe so. Yes, ma'am. I would direct that question to the treasurer's office as far as how they do some sort of rolling calculation of what that balance is and the cash that the amounts that they're able to take.
And they are inside the computer and we will ask them soon.
The last comment I'll make here before I move to the next page, or I guess really quickly, I'll just say that on the next page, the treasurer can use these interest costs to pay for the administrative costs supporting the credit facilities. That would be new language. One additional point to highlight, these interest dollars are not similarly the application of the Uniform Investments. I want to make sure I'm getting the language right here. Yes, there we go. The Uniform Prudent Investor Act does not apply to these interest funds. So the treasurer would have more authority, leeway to be less, or kind of more speculative, if you will, with the interest
Is
dollars.
that a purposeful drafting choice?
Yes, it was.
Representative Holcomb.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say not purposeful on my part.
Yeah.
It was intended to do that. Yes, ma'am.
And in the same vein, I know this isn't your legislation, but is the intent to make cost, or is the intent to make cost plus inflation in any given year? I mean, I understand how the financing to the revolving fund works, and I think this is a great idea.
Mhm.
But I'm just wondering what this does to the general funding, the fiscal note will address.
Yes.
Yeah, well, we have the fiscal note.
Okay,
And then we have the treasurer here to answer questions. It's treasurer's office here to answer questions. Representative Page.
Yes, could you explain more about bulk purchasing, what that really entails? Is that the first time that our state government has been involved in something of that nature?
I will defer that question to the treasurer's office. I don't know to what extent they have investigated the possibility of doing this previously. But, you know, I think the broadest sense of the concept is you have certain manufacturers who manufacture homes. And the thought here is to try to leverage these funds to be able to bulk purchase those offsite manufactured housing to try to get better rates for developers in Vermont to then be able to utilize those and help drive down the cost of housing.
Right.
Whether the state has gone through this previously or investigated use of funds like this, I'm not sure.
Representative Maslin.
And maybe saying what you're saying and somebody correct me, but I think, when we buy things in bulk, it's always less expensive than trying to buy one of these units one at a time.
It can be, yes, sir.
A handful at a time. Thank you.
That's why we're buying houses as opposed to paper and pens and things like
And
that.
I think the treasurer can answer these, treasurer's office can try to answer these
I
questions.
would encourage you to ask Canfield for the report on this, because I think it's their sort of pre-purchasing, but the state, I think it only takes that 10% of total cost up front, and then they transfer ownership before they actually own homes. It's about stabilizing the market.
Rep. Charlton is familiar with
Yes,
this
I'm
area.
gonna also encourage us to hold that and just make sure we get through all the language of the basics of the bill.
Okay.
I'm not thinking we're voting on this one today, team.
Okay, so I'm gonna bring you back to page 6, section 4, moving away from the treasurers and the credit facilities into a pilot program. So this is an offsite construction accelerator pilot. This would be administered by the Agency of Commerce and Community Development in collaboration with the Department of Buildings and General Services to develop a pilot demonstration project and study that explores the possibilities of reducing housing development costs through modular construction. That's in the sub A. The pilot focuses on these following elements: bulk purchasing of single development or aggregation of multiple, a bulk purchasing for a single development or an aggregation of multiple developments of housing, streamlining regulatory processes and creating pre-approved modular designs, creating a loan loss reserve. Section subdivision 4 here, offsite construction, including panelized or volumetric modular construction, statewide procurement consortium, local permitting and state alignment, and creation and adoption of offsite building codes.
Representative Maslin.
Yeah, thank you. I don't recall seeing loan loss reserves in front of us before. That may just, I hadn't encountered it, but is that something we often do in through the treasurer's office?
I would defer that question to the treasurer.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. So as part of this pilot project, the Agency of Commerce has to work with the state treasurer to identify the feasibility of providing this guarantee or other device to facilitate bulk purchasing. So my understanding of how this works is you're giving the treasurer the authority under these credit facilities to do this bulk purchasing. And then this is intended to be a pilot program to then see how that actually carries out in reality. Prior to distributing funds for bulk purchasing, the treasurer has to consult with DHCD, Vermont State Housing Authority, VHFA, and the Vermont Housing Conservation Board. The treasurer already does consult with the local investment advisory committee when they're determining what to use those credit facility funds for. So this would be an additional consultation for just this pilot program. Pilot shall occur in one or more municipalities willing to participate in the regulatory reforms necessary to implement. The municipalities would be eligible for a municipal planning grant under sub E, and then sub F has a report due in February 15th of 2028. Written report to certain committees in the legislature and about, outcomes of the pilot. And then the report shall include information on whether to enact a statewide building code or codes for off-site construction. Next section is VHIP. I could be pretty quick on this section. You all know what the VHIP program is. What this would do is it would allow the Department of Housing and Community Development or the entities that distribute the VHIP funds to provide those loans or grants up front prior to the work on the project for rehabilitation. Currently, the landlord has to provide those funds up front, and then they get money throughout the life cycles of the project. So this would allow them to upfront those costs. Next section, section 6, is Vermont Economic Development Authority. What this is doing, pardon the scroll, it is amending the definition of an eligible facility or an eligible project. So VITA can use its money, its funds to fund eligible facilities and projects. And within that definition, it's adding, after consultation with and with deference to the Vermont Housing Finance Agency, VITA could fund, beginning here, multi-unit housing developments of 5 or more units when requested by and jointly financed with a financing lender, except that the authority, the Vermont Economic Development Authority, shall not finance housing developments that utilize funding issued by the Vermont Housing Finance Agency.
Do you know why, or should I wait on that question?
Why this is being included?
Yeah.
It was a discussion in the House Commerce Committee last year at a point, my understanding is VITA is primarily there providing funding for economic development initiatives, kind of the sister, entity to the Vermont Housing Finance Agency. You all did add in a few years ago the ability for VITA to finance long-term care facilities. And my understanding is this has been a request of the Economic Development Authority to kind of add additional, finance capacity for development of housing.
Oh, I'm sorry. That part makes sense. I'm wondering why it can't be a project that is also being.
Financed by
Yes.
Vermont Housing Finance Agency. My apologies.
That's
That
my question.
was specifically requested by VHFA, so I
Okay.
referred to them as to why they have a concern there. Next, section 7 is about municipal plans. So within municipal plans, there are certain housing elements within those municipal plans. And what this section is saying is a municipality shall include within the housing element of the municipal plan an identification, I'm on lines 20 and moving forward, an identification and analysis of existing and projected housing needs for the projected population, including housing needs for individuals with disability, and provide regulations that allow for the rehabilitation, improvement, or development of the number of housing units needed as identified in the land use plan. So if you have a municipal plan, your housing element needs to do that identification and analysis. Or sub 2, if the municipality cannot meet the regional housing targets that are developed in the statewide housing needs assessment that's published by the Department of Housing and Community Development, then the municipality shall, starting here, provide to the Department of Housing and Community Development an analysis of regulatory and physical constraints preventing them from developing sufficient housing to meet those housing targets. So you're either going to provide more information in your municipal plan about how you're going to meet those housing targets. And if you can't meet those housing targets, you're going to provide DHCD and analysis of what are the barriers that are preventing you from doing so. There's a lot of, additional information that would have to be included in that information. So a quantification of your existing and projected needed housing types, an inventory of sites that are available, an analysis of any constraints to housing development, detailed description of what actions the jurisdiction is going to take. There's quite a lot there that a municipality would have to do if they're not going to include the information on how they're going to meet their housing targets in their housing element of their municipal plan.
Is this just for folks trying to participate in any of the above programs, or is this just a blanket requirement for all municipalities?
This would be a blanket requirement of a municipality if a municipality has a municipal plan. They
Every
have,
municipality has a municipal plan.
my understanding is not every municipality has a municipal plan.
They don't have to have a municipal plan.
Correct.
That is my understanding.
Thank you.
May I ask a question, presumably committee?
No, let's wait for that. Please do write it down because they're all good questions to ask.
The B and the C is just saying that the housing element of the plan can incorporate other information and policies that have been identified by other plans adopted by the governing body or by the statewide housing needs assessment. So if there's some work that's already been done, you can kind of incorporate that by reference. And then the amount and detail provided, it doesn't prohibit the legislative body from going above and beyond what is required in the language here. It's the sub-C. And then there's 2 new positions within the Department of Housing and Community Development. The entire act takes effect July 1, 2026. And I will remind you, we skipped section 1. Some of us were not here on time.
Oh. That was fun. We did rearrange the agenda. I don't know. We actually only started early because you were here, Cam.
That is true. That is true. That is absolutely true.
Don, would you like to share your section with us?
I would love to.
You can do it from there while
Do you
Cam
want
stays.
Seth's computer? Because I can't give you mine.
I think Ted's having a nice little break over there.
Actually, you're right. Honestly, yep.
Whatever. I'm Gray, Office of Legislative Counsel. I even forgot my Snoopy walking up here. You guys have me all sorts of upset. Happy Friday.
You too.
Special assessment bonds. This is pretty simple stuff. This doesn't disrupt anything about the existing special assessments that already exist in Title 24, right? So that's a way of apportioning assessments across properties within a municipality, and when they're benefited by within this limited area, you assess to essentially fund that public improvement of limited benefit to that area. So this does nothing to disrupt those authorizing statutes that exist. This is solely a financing tool that is meant to make it simpler to do long-term financing for those kinds of limited improvements. And the way that it does it, you can think about the problem being, well, we can assess the member properties of that special assessment district, right? But if they go out to bond and do something like a general obligation bond, they're going to require a vote of the municipality as a whole, which is of course larger than just the set of folks who would be receiving that particular benefit. And so this is a tool to simplify the process for bonding that would be backed exclusively by the assessments within that district. And so what you see here is a newly created special assessment bonds. And the key solution to this problem is in the first clause of A. So upon approval of the legislative body of the municipality, and subject to subsection C, a municipality may issue revenue bonds for the purpose of financing a public improvement for the benefit of the limited area to be served by the improvement. So not requiring a vote of the municipality as a whole, this is just approval of the legislative body. So mayor, select board, the like. again, just going to reiterate all the processes that already exist for the special assessments to be imposed in the first place, which may be done by majority vote of the municipality, or if you have universal consent in writing from the member properties, those would still exist. That still has to happen for this bond to be issued. But for the special assessment bonds themselves, you would only need the approval of the legislative body. We'll come to the next section, which speaks to, I think, the big questions everyone's going to have, which is who is on the hook for this. So upon approval of the legislative body, Muni may issue those revenue bonds. It's issued for an essential and governmental purpose. Subsection B, a revenue bond issued pursuant to this section shall be payable solely and exclusively from the special assessments levied on the properties to be served and shall not constitute general indebtedness of the municipality. No holder of a bond issued under this section shall have the right to compel any exercise of the taxing power of the municipality to pay on the bond. So it's not like a general obligation bond. The only thing backing these bonds is the assessments that are already independently imposed. That's why there isn't the same risk in having just the approval of the legislative body. These kinds of bonds, the holders of these bonds wouldn't be able to compel a tax levy to pay on them. They're solely backed by the assessments.
Fully backed by the special assessments levied.
Yep,
Properties.
exactly.
What's the difference between an assessment levied on a property and a tax?
In this case, it's just literally the funding that you're doing for this particular improvement, and you're apportioning it differently among those member properties. So not a general tax across the full muni. It's just what is assessed for this
A
improvement.
localized tax.
Yes. Yes, I like that.
Right.
Thank you.
And there is a last piece to this section. This is really just about marketability. This is not a required piece if you're simply trying to authorize the ability to do this. Like I said, this section just intended to increase the amount of financing tools available. But this was suggested by the Vermont Bond Bank to,
Gotcha.
I think, in an attempt to protect public markets. And so they introduced this condition, or suggested this condition, that the muni may issue a revenue bond only if one or more of the following conditions are met. And there are two alternate conditions. So one is that the municipality receives a commitment letter, so backing the issuance from one of these reputable organizations. So Bond Bank, a bank that's regulated by one of the major national regulators, so FDIC, Comptroller of the Currency, or the Federal Reserve, or if it's a credit union regulated by the National Credit Union Administration. So essentially getting a commitment letter from a reputable organization is the way to think about this first condition. And then two is alternatively, maybe you haven't received that commitment letter. If you received a credit rating, that this is at least BBB, which is what's considered investment grade, from one of the nationally recognized statistical ratings organizations that have an active US public finance practice. Just to spell out what that is, there's actually a list of these kinds of organizations on the SEC's website. So you can think of it as like Fitch, Standard & Poor's, Moody's, those sorts of things. And if you're wondering about the US public finance practice, the credit ratings agencies have different sectors that they rate. I think it's like 5 different kinds of sectors or something like this. One of them is municipal public practice. So this is getting the most directly related credit rating that you can get. So these are both protections for the public market. If you can get a commitment letter that backs up the issuance from one of these organizations, or if you have a minimum investment grade credit rating from one of the national credit rating agencies.
John, you did say it was the municipality. So the municipality is still issuing the revenue bond, even though there's a special assessment district that is responsible for the repayment.
Yes, but it's only backed by the special assessment. So no one could compel a tax levy on the members of the municipality, like the general public within the municipality.
Wondering if that special assessment district have to set up its collection processes in order to qualify for that bond rating, because at least with the taxing authority, you've got some kind of remedy if somebody doesn't pay the assessment or the tax.
Yep, I think part of what you're raising is the basic question, who is going to want to buy the bonds in the absence of some measure like that? Like what sort of protection does the bondholder have? They're going to know, right, that this isn't backed by a tax levy. It's going to be entirely dependent on that stream. So it may be that to enhance or make more attractive to investors, you may need to do something.
was there, during the development of the legislation, reference to other states that have this type of setup?
Yes, so I think it'd be helpful to get the Vermont Bond Bank on this, but definitely reported that there are many states that allow revenue bonds backed by special assessments called special assessment bonds. So maybe worth thinking about if they do other things to increase marketability. I mean, that was one of the concerns from the get-go is, will people want to buy these? And, you know, worst case, they don't, but the tool exists and you at least have the authority. And if someone could create a sufficiently attractive issuance, they'd have the authority to do it.
I want to make sure I understand the mechanics. The town itself decides it wants to bond. It goes out, gets whatever one of these verifications are that they are bondable based on the value and the project for the special assessment district. They pass the legislative body itself, whether it's a council or a select board, approves it. Bond goes through and it's paid back through an increase in the levy in the special assessment district.
It doesn't have to be an increase in the levy. It's just the levy that's done each year to pay for the improvements, as would typically be done even in the absence of the bond.
Okay, thank you.
The one thing I think generally you described it correctly. The one thing I would note, and I've noticed previously, is just the timing. If you think about what this is saying, subsection C is a condition for the issuance, and it requires that you have a commitment letter for the issuance or an actual credit rating for the issuance itself. The reason I raise this, it just means you're pretty far along at the point that you would know you meet the conditions to issue it. So just to say, you would have to go through a process. It may be a relatively simple process, I don't know, but you have to go through essentially the whole process of producing what would be the bond before you will know that you've met the conditions here to actually issue it. So I think it's essentially the way you described it, but just know that you're not going to know this final piece in C until far along.
Thank you. Is that your whole section?
That is my whole section.
Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, guys.
So okay with folks if we run into the lunch hour a bit? I'm thinking, well, no.
Yeah, to do.
Well, we have to decide. We need to vote on 9:15, which we could pivot to for 3 minutes. But who knows how long a vote will take. We just spent a long time voting on one bill on the floor. So don't want to predict that. And then hypothetically, we could hear from the treasurer's office, the League of Cities and Towns, the reporter of the bill, and JFO. That seems like a lot. I feel like maybe that won't fit. So I think what's the best idea is that we vote on the bill and then we hear from Ted. And then when we get back, we hear from all of the many witnesses that are here.
Get back from
The break.
lunch break.
No, I think we get back from like the whole big break.
So do 9:15 and then finish this after break.
Hear from 9:15 Ted and then finish this after break.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So here from 9:15 now, and then we're gonna have lunch, because I have a meeting, so I need to just know if I need to.
We are going to vote at 9:15 and then we're going to hear from Ted and then we will adjourn until 2 weeks from now, a week from now, or whatever, however you do that math.
So I will probably leave for 10.
Okay.
10 on 775.
That,
Yes.
indeed, yeah, yes, okay.
After 9:15.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So
And butter.
on the topic of 9:15.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Representative Wassenbach.
I move 9:15 is favorable.
Indeed.
Deferring to the ranking member, but he seemed to hesitate.
It's nice to mix it up sometimes.
And then I don't have to second.
Thank you. Representative Wassenbach moves that we find H 9:15 favorable.
As a
Representative Brannigan seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, if the clerk could please call the roll.
Representative Brannigan.
yes.
I'll vote yes as Representative Burkhart. Representative Higley.
Yes.
Representative Holcomb.
Yes.
Representative Kimball,
Yes.
Representative Maslin,
I see.
Representative Odie is absent, Representative Page,
No.
Representative Wazazat,
Yes.
Representative Canfield,
Yes.
and Representative Kornheiser.
Yes.
We have voted, we voted the bill favorable of 9-1-1. Yep,
That math works.
yeah, I did the math. And-
Good math.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Okay. Yep. Ted, can you join us?
Right.
Thank you.
Barnett, Joint Fiscal Office. Good news is that I will be quite short, recognizing that I am in between y'all and lunch and town meeting week. I was also, it's too bad John and Cam left. I was going to throw shade for being here on time and having a working computer. Okay, great. So I will share my screen. Again, too many windows, but the primary impact from the bill, as you all heard, was through the provision that would allow the treasurer to retain interest on investments in their both existing and expanded under the bill credit facilities. In fiscal year 27, this would be reflective primarily of or almost exclusively of the loans that are currently on the treasurer's books or would be drawn down under the existing facility. But that amount of foregone interest revenue is estimated at $1.2 million in fiscal year 27. If this bill were to be enacted, there would be, they would continue to draw down additional funding through their existing facilities. And they would also be able to make about $30 million in additional loans available to folks. And that $30 million, if it is lent out, would no longer be able to be invested on the short-term market and earn, the treasurer indicated, about 3.5% in interest. And so collectively, the theoretical maximum impact, and this is a few fiscal years in the future, is about $3 million from retaining the existing interest. If the credit facilities were to expand at full capacity, that's the maximum impact. I will note that the treasurer emphasized that this would take a few fiscal years you would have to, in the new facility, you would have to identify awardees. They would have to have projects ready to actually draw down loans that are made available to them. So it'd be a few fiscal years. And because of the way they manage money, it's unlikely for all of that capacity to be out at one time. Folks would pay some money back in and it's lent out and they reevaluate the portfolio periodically. So that I would say that 3 million is kind of a theoretical maximum. It would be less than that, but we always like to provide you all worst case scenarios in terms of foregone interest income.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
I will two tiny pieces. The offsite construction accelerator pilot specifies that municipal planning grants shall be available. For me, reading the bill, it wasn't clear the funding source for those grants.
Those already exist somewhere.
They do in the property transfer tax. So if it did come out, the amount, so I don't know if it would happen through folks would apply to ACCD, so they may be using existing resources. I don't know if the intention was to make more resources available. It wasn't.
Were the municipal planning grants different than the municipal planning grant? I didn't see it described as a new kind of municipal planning grant.
Right. I would say, yes, if it is municipal planning grants, I think it wasn't entirely clear that the PTT existing planning grants were the source. And if they are the source, you would have more folks competing for the same potential pot of resources.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then, yes, there are two positions created, but the bill does not include funding for those two positions.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah. So, is this something that a bank can't do? Why is the treasurer doing it?
To respond to
The treasurer, they may have additional context. The treasurer is making very low interest loans compared to existing, like what you would be able to if you were to borrow on the commercial market, those interest rates are much higher than what the treasurer is offering. let's see, I put it somewhere here. Yes, the interest rates through the existing 10% for Vermont program range from 1% to 2.5%. It's much lower than commercial rates, and it depends on the longer of the loan term or amortization period. So if the loan period is less than 5 years, they're paying an interest rate of 1%. And sometimes this funding is kind of used as bridge capital. You know, there's a lot of different uses for it. So the average loan term is about, when thinking through the modeling, 1.5%. So the interest rates are quite low.
So I feel like putting an exclamation point against my question, after my question. We are undercutting the banks. And so what is the government doing in this work, in this
I think
business?
this is a good question for David Scher and not for Ted.
Okay.
It's a very, I mean, it's a good question. Any other questions for Ted?
Can I, yeah, do the $1.2 million loss? So the sentence says, retaining that the interest for the Vermont Housing Special Fund would result in an estimated 1.2 mil loss to the general fund. Do we mean the general fund that we know and love? Or is this another general fund?
It is the definite article general fund. Yes. Yep, and it's because, right, under current law, interest income from the treasurer's investments flows to the general fund. And so if the treasurer were to retain that interest, it would be foregone interest income that's available for the budget, you know, through the general fund.
Oh, so.
It will, yes,
Bill, they're gonna spend some time on.
absolutely. Yep.
Thank you.
Ted, I'm trying to figure out I don't know if it was discussed in their committee, what the average amortization would be on, well, because some of it is equity, some of it is loans, right? In the mix that was presented in the bill. So any idea of the part that is a credit facility?
So in talking with the treasurer, they, in running the modeling for this, they were looking at 1.5%. It being
for 20 years.
So that is reflective of an amortization period of 5 to 10 years. And then, yeah, so 2% is 10 to 15 years, and then 15 to 20 years and beyond is 2.5%. So it scales in that way depending on the period. But yes, understanding that when the treasurer looks at their portfolio, using an average rate of 1.5% to be best reflective of the portfolio is where they suggested.
Just wondering about the uses then too. I mean, so if you're using the funds to purchase a manufactured home, essentially that's the largest part of the mortgage balance or the repayment of it. So usually that's a 25 to 30 year repayment. So I don't know how 5 to 10 years works anyway.
I think those are questions for David.
Okay.
And I will just definitely, and the one piece of commentary I know that the General Housing Committee was intending, not necessarily for this money to be out long-term to purchase modular housing. It was there to be a backstop and provide Huntington Homes as assurance that they would have, that someone would be responsible for these modular housing. So yeah, I don't know if it was necessarily intended for the treasurer to hold on to these things long-term, but I would defer to the treasurer.
Should be for itself. But I think as a principle, it's an interesting concept because this is why we should always think of reduced revenue as a tax expenditure, because we are making appropriation decisions through the treasurer's office.
Any other questions for Ted? Can folks hang out for a few more minutes while we ask David some questions? Okay. And then Samantha is available to talk about special assessment districts, but I feel like we are then pushing too far into lunch and we're going to pick back up with Samantha either personally, one-on-one over break, or when we get back here on Tuesday. Thank you for being there in the Zoom, Samantha. Sorry about that. David, the floor is yours. Hello.
Hi there. Good afternoon. David Scher, Deputy Treasurer, for the record. I heard a number of different questions. I think it might be most helpful. I don't want, the Legislative Council and Joint Fiscal Office did a good overview of the bill. I certainly don't want to redo their good work. I think maybe it's most helpful to answer questions that the committee has, if that makes sense to the chair.
My first question is, do you want to do the things in this? Does the office want to do the things in this bill and why?
Absolutely, we want to do the things in this bill. We think that these are all good ideas that will help build housing in Vermont, which is a core need and interest of the state treasurer in assisting. The 2.5% additional loan capacity under the LIAC statute would allow for, as the Joint Fiscal Office mentioned, about $30 million additional dollars in loan capacity that we'd be able to send out. The current LIAC loans, the 10% chunk, has gone to support and will go in the coming year or so to support about 1,700 units of housing. So there's really been significant leverage that's been gained from that loan capacity. And we think that some additional loan capacity will add to that number quite significantly in ways that are meaningful for Vermonters. The additional piece around the modular construction special fund piece, as well as the entrance retention. Again, it gives more tools to get housing out into the community that we think will be valuable. And especially with the housing special fund piece, it will allow for some potentially innovative ways to help finance that market in particular that we identified in the Committee on Housing and identified as potential opportunities to build housing at very reasonable rates, which is one of the challenges that we face. So that's a very, very brief, high-level overview, but happy to answer more questions about it.
David, can you talk about, I'm concerned about too much of the fund balance being committed in terms of the prudent principle and looking at how much cash you need to keep on hand. We've had a lot of conversation about reserves for school districts. So what is your rule of thumb for how much of your cash balance you need to keep on hand that is not otherwise obligated?
Yeah, so this obviously the proposal here is to go from 12.5% of the state's average daily cash balance to 15% of the average daily cash balance. We do believe that is still a very prudent and relatively low risk percentage, although we do project that the total daily cash balance won't be as high as it was a couple years ago. There is no reason to believe it's going back down to where it was, say, in the early teens. And we do believe that this is a prudent amount or a prudent percentage amount, and that it does not create any significant risk in terms of being able to cover the state's costs on a daily basis, which is fundamentally what that amount of, what that is for, what the daily cash balance is for. So we feel like this is still prudent and safe. If there were to be a proposal to do more than that, that would certainly be another conversation and would require us to do some more thinking. But we believe that this amount remains within a prudent and reasonable calculation of risk.
Well, in the event that the federal government stops sending us the money that they are obligated to, as has happened in the past, do you have a contingency for how much money you should have on hand at that point?
I mean, we feel that this is 15% of the daily cash balance, which is, it could be as much as 150 million is the 15% of 1.5 billion. We still think that the amounts that would remain are well within a safe margin, and the additional 2.5% are not going to create a risk that would cause problems for the state meeting its daily expenditures. Of course, there is additional risk in general to the state being able to cover some of its expenses with respect to federal risk. And, that is going to be true regardless of whether this additional 2.5% is added. We don't believe that this adds risk unreasonably.
The part of the bill that talks about potentially equity investment for the treasurer's office, is that something that you feel do you do that in any other program right now?
The equity investment piece would be specific to that interest retention fund the Vermont Housing Special Fund. So that would potentially be a new concept that we would be working on, at least within the LIAC portfolio. sorry, that wouldn't actually really be within the LIAC portfolio. That would be a new function that we'd be permitted to do. And so that would be worked on in conjunction with, the housing department. And that is something that would, if we do go down that road, it's not guaranteed that we would. It does obviously give us that option. That would be something that would be a new function for us. It's not guaranteed that that's what the decision we would make. There is some flexibility there in terms of perhaps setting up a loan loss reserve or perhaps buying down the total amount of the borrowing costs for a developer. So there's other options that are available to us there. But the part of the idea and concept behind that 1% and not the 1%, the interest retention piece is to allow for a bit more flexibility such that we don't have to be thinking as much about the prudent investor rule in the way that we do with the LIAC money, which is of course the state's daily cash balance. This is more of a straightforward appropriation type of expenditure.
And I guess the question I had was on the underwriting of the special assessment districts and looking at that, because how involved do you expect the treasurer's office to be in looking at the ability of special assessment districts to pay back any kind of revenue bond that's taken out?
So that is a piece, and I apologize, I'll have to get back to you on that. It is not my sense that was going to be a big function of our office, but before I give that definitive answer, I think I would like to check in the office and make sure that I'm not misunderstanding that piece of it.
All right, thank you.
And we'll talk to the bond bank about that and the league as well. David, I'm hesitant to ask this because I think states make a variety of decisions. Some of them not best practice and some of them best practice, and often so saying what are other states doing is not necessarily always a path to understanding the best way to do something. But I am curious about what norms are around the country for how much of what percentage of funds on hand are invested in this way. Is this something other states are doing?
I do believe that we're not I'm confident we're not the only state with this in statute. I don't believe we're a outlier on that, or we're not unique in that. But I don't have ready at hand what common percentages are around the country. So I'd have to get back to you on that. My apologies.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the treasurer's office? Yeah, Representative Brennan.
The bank question.
Oh, yeah.
Why are we doing this at all? Why aren't banks doing it? Lenders, real lenders.
We're doing this because we can lend at much lower rates, and that makes a real concrete difference on the financing calculation. It can be the difference between these projects being developed or not being developed. Difference between like whatever it might be, 5, 6, 7%, and the 1.5 to 2.5% that we're doing can equal, depending on how big the project is, that could be thousands of dollars per month on the loan, obligations that they have. And that can be the difference between a project getting built and not getting built. And so that is why we're doing it. We think it's a valuable, and there's not zero cost to the state, of course, but a relatively low cost way of leveraging the state's money in order to promote housing. And it has a lot of value in terms of creating units.
Well, there's no doubt we need housing units, and the idea of getting a break on the interest you have to pay is attractive, but why is the state doing it? This is public money we're using. Why is it valuable for us to do that? Why not a real lender, a banker?
Yeah, I mean, the lenders just aren't able to match the rates that we can provide. And the rates that we can provide allow this housing to be built when it otherwise might not be. And so given the extraordinary need for housing that we face in this state, the treasurer has determined that this is an important way to utilize the statutory authority that we have to make these loans. And so it's a cost-effective way to promote housing that we believe otherwise may not be able to be built without our office floating these loans.
Guess what I would offer Representative Brannigan is I've heard a lot of people describe the situation in housing in Vermont right now as a market failure. And when there's a market failure, there's ways we can change the market with regulation. There's also ways we can change the market with changing the financing. And it seems like right now we're trying to do all the things to sort of step in to fix the market failure, and this is one of them.
I have a lot to say,
Yeah.
but I
Okay.
won't.
Yeah.
It's late.
Totally heard. Any other questions for,
Comment for.
okay, let's let David finish and then we will all have that conversation. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Um,
And we'll be happy to be back in the future when the committee discusses it again. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think follow-up from this, we're gonna need to hear from the leagues of cities and towns, especially about the assessment districts. Next time we are here together, I also want to hear from, there are a number of downtown organizations that are funded out of their special assessment districts, and I want to make sure that they would be comfortable with sort of this new use for that authority. We have the bond bank questions. Who else needs hearing from?
Housing, the Department of Housing, because they have their 802 homes project, which
Yes, thank you. It's very similar.
very similar.
Okay,
Do we need
And
to hear
then-
from Regional Planning Commission?
I don't know. Oh, for those municipal planning grants? Maybe, yeah. What?
VHFA, maybe, I don't feel the need to about this.
Because of that little.
Yeah, they came up, so I'm just,
Yep.
I don't feel the need to hear from them. I'm just-
I think I was the one who was curious. I'll send an email.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Keep me in touch over break if you can, and